Cycling for me has never been about the bikes. They've only ever been the prerequisite tool. I do not see just a bike race, I see riders on heroic journeys and warriors doing battle. At one point, cycling was the most popular sport in Europe because newspapers told magnificent tales about epic races and crafted the great champions into legends. But with the advent of television, cycling lost some of its mystique, and that golden age of journalism and narration has perished. So now let us try to return some romance to the beautiful sport. Let us praise and give glory to phenomenal performances to be remembered for decades to come. Let us dwell on the moments that inspire and move us. Let us chronicle the rise and fall of heroes. Let us chart these life-changing journeys, these cycling odysseys. All right, welcome back to another episode of Cycling Odysseys. I'm your host, Patrick Santino. Okay, we're doing it. We're finishing off. Finally. Thank God I'm done doing these. That Tour de France rewind. It was an easy way for a lot of episodes, but man, it was more work than I thought it would be. Isn't that everything? Anyways, final day, stage 21. Sorry, I'm still sick if I sound sick. Despite the bad title, I really do think this one actually encapsulates basically the whole purpose of the show. I'm going to kind of leave it up to you guys to figure that kind of stuff out, but, hopefully you enjoy this one. The stage itself, the ending was pretty exciting, but the stage itself, especially for run-ins, because France was basically locked down. It was actually very boring this year. Usually I usually enjoy the last stage a lot, and I enjoyed it this year, but this was the least enjoyable final stage into Paris. I usually really like the day, but this year it was just okay, really. Yeah. So anyways, I think this final report, I don't know, kind of ties the room together, finishes off well, I would say. So yeah, here, let's jump into it. I'll talk about it a little bit more afterwards. Here we go. All great things must come to an end. Tour de France 2020, Stage 21, Meties-la-Jolie to Paris, 122 kilometers. Tadej Pogačar has won the 107th Tour de France. Sam Bennett wins on the Champs-Élysées and retains the green jersey. The Tour de France is over. The great labors are accomplished. The heroes have made it home. Just as Odysseus made it home to Ithaca, the Tour de France has reached Paris for the 107th time. After the 3-week odyssey, surely all these riders will have a story or two to tell. Yes, someday these riders will be grandpas, and perhaps on a winter evening, their grandchildren will come into their house after shoveling snow all morning and sledding all afternoon. They'll be toasting up with cups of hot chocolate and marshmallows and sitting on comfy cushions and couches near the fire while the grown-ups prepare a hearty chili dinner. The former rider will be sitting in a chair near the fire with a reading lamp overhead, studying stories of great fame from bygone eras, telling of heroes and armies who overcame tremendous odds, fought historic battles, or slew giants. Yes, some of these stories are about legendary cyclists and their comrades. But he will put down his books to entertain the kiddies. The grandchildren will prompt their granddad, "Papa, before supper is ready, tell us a story from your cycling days long ago." At this point, perhaps some of the riders will mention the events from this 2020 Tour de France. Maybe Alexander Kristoff of UAE will talk about the day Thor helped him win in Nice. Surely Julien Alaphilippe of the Deceuninck Quickstep, the musketeer, will honor his late father and tell of his exhilarating antics to win Stage 2 in Nice, the one dedicated to his fallen sire. I would guess Alexei Lutsenko of Astana would speak of his summiting Mount Aiguille. Surely one of the Bora-Hansgrohe brothers shall speak of the stage they put all the sprinters to the sword in the crosswinds under the leadership of Peter Sagan of Bora-Hansgrohe. I would suspect Wout van Aert of Jumbo-Visma would speak more highly of his teamwork for star-crossed leader Primož Roglič of Jumbo-Visma than of his 2 sprint wins. Surely, Sam Bennett of DeCointed Quickstep will still be turning red in the face recounting his emotions from his first Tour stage win. Mark Hirschi of Sunweb may pair his heartbreak on stage 9 with his redemption win on stage 12. Danny Martinez of EF will surely tell of the time he outrode the two Boras on the Puy-Marie. Caleb Ewan of Lotto Soudal will mention his stage wins, but shall remember more, gutting it out behind even the Gruppetto on those brutal mountain stages. Soren Krauh Andersen of Sunweb will talk of the 2 times he seized his opportunity with both hands to counterattack at the perfect time for 2 stage victories. Leonard Kamna of Bora Hansgrohe will tell of a breakaway that finally went right for him. If Superman Lopez of Astana does not have a memorized play-by-play spiel of the Col de Lo's win, I shall be very upset. But at the same time, Sepp Kuss of Jumbo-Visma will probably fondly remember that day as well, when he proved to be one of the best climbers in the world outright. And surely Michał Kwiatkowski of Ineos Grenadiers will remember stage 18 with supreme joy. But he will tell the story wrong when he says Richard Carapaz of Ineos Grenadiers and his team gifted him the win. It was completely well earned. But all of them as they begin to tell their story shall say, I tell you a tale from the 2020 Tour. Yes, kiddies, that was the Tour of Slovenian fratricide. Pogačar's first Tour win when he slew his older brother with that greatest of rides against the clock that stunned us all. This Tour has given not only many of the riders, but we ourselves stories to tell. That was my purpose in producing these reports, to capture my thoughts at the time and describe my feelings for others, to share in my joy and, so often this Tour, in my astonishment. As I am still in my prime years of life, I can say my memory is solid and far-reaching, but without these reports, surely many of these thoughts and emotions would quickly fade. I am glad I have the play-by-play of the events up the Col de Lo's when Superman put on his cape. I am happy to have written something that attempts to honor Sam Bennett's joy at his first stage win. And as history reshapes the story with more details and perhaps changing accounts, I am glad to have put down in writing in real time my thoughts on Pogačar's immortal TT. But as I mentioned at the beginning, dear readers, we have reached Paris. The coronation procession and the Sprinters World Championships on the Champs-Élysées always throws up a couple of final stories. And before that, there are always more details from the penultimate day press conferences with the winner-elect and other very important people who give their thoughts on this year's edition of the Tour that is now informally complete. Eddie Merckx, the cannibal and greatest cyclist of all time and winner of 5 Tours de France, among other things, candidly sounded off that Jumbo-Visma rode stupidly and that he could see Pogačar coming from behind for days and weeks at this point. Merckx damningly added this Tour will go down in history because of Pogačar's ride, but also because Jumbo-Visma thought they had already won. Reflecting on such remarks, perhaps Roglic and the team were too overly focused on how his form was and not enough on the competitors. But besides the Paris-Sourde on stage 8, where Roglic maybe didn't chase down Pogačar, who had lost 120 in the crosswinds the day before, where else was Jumbo supposed to put time into him? I can't even think of a moment when Roglic forsook an opportunity to twist the knife on his little brother because he would have been happy to have him finish on the podium. I'm not sure there were any opportunities to even ease off on them, even if they wanted. The heartbreaker for Jumbo, I think, was that Pogačar significantly improved everything, but especially his time trialing during lockdown. And there was no way to perceive his time trialing improvements because the only time trial came on the penultimate day. Also from the interviews last night, for which I heard clips and snippets, it seems I have guessed rightly. Yesterday, Tadej Pogačar was riding to win the Tour de France, but that was obvious and clear as soon as he railed the first turn of yesterday's course. He was going for the win, but it still doesn't sound like he really thought he would win. He had recklessly thrown caution to the wind, riding without a bike computer to give him data about his watts, heart rate, probably even time or distance to go. He set out on a madman's pace, and eventually the time checks started coming back in his favor, which psychologically fueled him to hold the effort to the finish. but in the press conferences, he did sound as stunned as everyone else that he actually did come back to win. In the morning, I was just happy to be in second place, and yeah, it was my goal to defend that. Then I had a really good day, and it turned out I'm in yellow now. I'm super happy. I'm just a kid from Slovenia. I have 2 sisters, 1 brother. I don't know what to say. I like to have fun. I like to enjoy life, the little things. So this press conference is too big for me. I don't know what to say about me, actually. And thus, there he was on the ride into the Champs-Élysées to formally complete his Tour victory. Tadej Pogačar of the UAE Emirates team is the champion of the 2020 Tour de France. He wore the yellow jersey with matching yellow shorts and full yellow Colnago bike. He has joined an elite club of riders that have won their Tour debut. He had won the King of the Mountains polka dots jersey and Best Young Rider white jersey as well, but alas, only one jersey could fit on his torso. He rode with his UAE team. Quite frankly, it was a little strange to see. Dear readers, say what you want on the boring dominance of Sky/Ineos in past years, but I always appreciated watching them celebrate together on the final day as I watched them battle and win together on all the rest of the days. I'm sure Pogačar's teammates and coaching staff played greater parts behind the scenes, from the car, on the bus, at the dinner table. But since we did not see their support on the road this year, it was a little weird to see them with him now. Yes, you all know which team I would love to see celebrating a Tour victory on this run-in to Paris this year. But alas, Jumbo-Visma has not won, and they were particularly hidden on the ride to the Champs-Élysées. Except their leader. Full credit to Primož Roglič. He congratulated Pogačar right away with a hug yesterday. He totally acknowledged his little brother deserved and earned the win. He graciously did many interviews when he could have just curled under a blanket. He kept his perspective when asked if this was the end of a dream. He answered, "Of course, but it was a dream just to be here in the first place." He chatted with riders in the peloton. He even posed for pictures on the bike with his little brother in the yellow jersey that he was wearing just yesterday. Roglič has had such a devastating defeat, but he has accepted it with the highest possible amount of class. He is a great sportsman. He is a great man. I wish him the highest possible success. The empty Champs-Élysées itself was strange, and it was not just because there were no fans. Perhaps I am mistaken, but the fauna seemed different because surely it is now a different season and no longer high summer in Paris. The shadows of the buildings were severely incorrect. The sidewalks were a sorry, barren sight. I missed the Norwegian corner with their large flags, across from the golden Joan of Arc statue that greets the riders as they come out of the underpass. The adrenaline-inducing cheers along the straight stretch where the red flame is situated were not there at all to build up the hype. But thankfully, we still saw the site of the Egyptian obelisk. The Arc de Triomphe looked better than ever, and none of this affected the riders' performance. For the sprinters, this was still the granddaddy sprint of them all. The Champs-Élysées cobbles were rough as usual, and so was the deceptive rise up. And the downside was extremely fast and treacherous as usual. At the Tour's final intermediate sprint, shockingly, Peter Sagan did not fight for points. Thus, right then, Sam Bennett had mathematically locked up the green jersey, and he had now only to finish the race. Sagan had said in an interview this morning that he would not go for the intermediate, and instead hinted he'd be all in for the final sprint for stage honors. Oh, the admission had startled some of us that at any point Sagan would concede the fight for the jersey he has always worn in Paris. He said he had already foregone attempts at stage wins in order to fight for the green jersey, but that had not worked out. So today he would try for the win on the greatest sprint finish in cycling. And so, for the 7th time, the peloton rolled through the Champs-Élysées finish line to take the bell lap. Only a little over 6 kilometers were left in the 2020 Tour de France. They rode up to the rise of the Arc de Triomphe, sailed around the greatest roundabout on earth, flew down the fast cobble side towards the Place de Delacour, and by this point, the lead-out trains were already gearing up. On such a fast sprint like this, they were all important. They swung right and back left on the side of the River Seine, back onto pavement where it was easier to move up to the front of the peloton. They took a hard left to the underpass near the Louvre. When they came out, they made a hard left between the Joan of Arc statue and what is usually Norwegian corner. By this point, the leadout trains were there because now they were crossing under the red flame, signifying 1 kilometer to go. Sunweb looked good, Trek looked good, and yes, Quickstep looked good. Sagan and Elia Viviani of Cofidis were lurking on Bennett's wheel. With 700 meters, they cut diagonally left, and Michael Morkov of Deceuninck Quickstep was proving why he is the best leadout man in the world. He surged to the front and was the first to take the final right turn with 500 meters to go onto the finishing straight. Behind him was Jasper Stuyven of Trek Segafredo, leading out the current champion of the world, Mats Pedersen of Trek Segafredo, wearing the rainbow jersey for the last time. For next week, a new world champion shall be crowned. Sam Bennett in the green points jersey on a green bike slotted in behind Pedersen. Behind Bennett was the mighty one Peter Sagan, who has been thoroughly defeated by a large margin, not solely because of the relegation. Morkov pulled off the front job done. Stuyven also did his final acceleration. And when Stuyven pulled off, Mad Pedersen, champion of the world, launched his bid for glory. But Sam Bennett in green was on him and launching in the same moment. Sagan was staying in Bennett's wheel as well. Sam Bennett, champion of Ireland, wearing the green jersey on the Champs-Elysees, came around the world champion and held off the charging Peter Sagan to win the final stage, his second stage of the Tour de France. This time he knew. This time he knew it was real, and he knew where he was. He, Sam Bennett, the first Irishman to wear and win the green jerseys since his mentor Sean Kelly did of old, had won on the Champs-Elysees. He was cheering and screaming with delight. When he came to a stop, he lifted up his green bike over his head with both hands to continue cheering. Everyone was passing, congratulating him, including Sagan, who was not in green for the first time. He came to the TV interview again and had more heartwarming things to say, just like last time. Last time, he was so out of sorts he couldn't even describe the sprint, besides to say he was worried he had lost. Today, he could tell every detail of the last lap. My description you just read was based off his words. He said he never thought he would win on the Champs-Elysees or while wearing the green jersey. But now he has won in green on what he says is his dream team. He said crossing the line made all the suffering through the mountains worth it. I'll note here, dear readers, this was literally the exact reason for the creation of the points competition. Bennett's a great interview. Perhaps we shall derive a nickname for him based off that. Oh, the way he opens up and speaks from the heart. Surely, surely, this will be a story the grandchildren will ask him to recount again and again. Unlike Bennett's interview, the rest of the podium ceremonies were rather dull affairs this year. Unfortunate, but not unexpected. It mostly involved Pogačar doing laps and wardrobe changes, for he won white, the polka dots, and of course, yellow. But Sam Bennett in green went up there. And finally, for once, the Super Combatif award for the entire tour was awarded to the correct person, baby Spartacus Mark Hershey of Sunweb. He was the revelation of the tour, and he surely lit up the race with the rest of his Sunweb team. And though 2020 has thrown the world into complete chaos, and at times it seems up is down and down is up, there are still some things we can rely on happening in this world. The Movistar team has won the team's classification for this 2020 Tour de France. Yes, this is the running joke because it seems they are the only team that target this competition, sometimes seemingly at the expense of their leaders' general classification positions. Soft-spoken Pog stood on the podium, but didn't say much for a winner's speech. It was certainly not like Geraint Thomas's, of Ineos Grenadiers, goofy mic drop speech in 2018. Surely that was great viewing. But besides Pog stood Rog holding his young child. On the other side of him stood Richie Porte, who was anxious to get home and meet his baby daughter their wife had given birth to while he was at this tour. I do not think babyface 21-year-old Pogačar has a child yet. Based on the quotes of his siblings, perhaps the proper question is how recently he has moved out of his parents' home. Young Egan last year, young Tadej this year. Who's next? Perhaps even younger Belgian Remco Evenepoel of Deceuninck Quickstep will win next year. Surely cycling is entering a new generation and era. Perhaps in a decade we will look back and say this Slovenian fratricide tour, when young Tadej bested his elder Primoz with his immortal TT, was the official start date of the era. And with that, we come to the end, dear readers. That is a wrap. We have been blessed with a beautiful tour despite the almost ominously shocking ending. It has absolutely turned out to be a great last-minute decision to cover this Tour de France. We have seen much. We have come a long way since Nice. We have experienced biblical weather of many sorts in the midst of the worst plague in living memory. We have journeyed in the footsteps of historic warriors. We have summited mountains where former titans once clashed. We have explored desolate landscapes and pioneered new routes that someday shall be legendary themselves. We saw sprinters perform feats of raw athleticism that dropped our jaws. We saw cyclists transform into shooting stars and meteors on harrowing descents. We saw Ironmen and musketeers seek out the hard way on the front day in and day out to warn the locals of the tour's approach like Paul Revere did of old. We saw tractors and lieutenants and even army knives ride in the vanguard of the peloton for hours on end, striking fear into the hearts of those behind. We saw superheroes and mighty falcons fly up mountains. We saw mortals lose skin, break bones, ride to the finish in tattered rags and still go on. Wounded warriors who refused to quit were they. We saw ambushes catch comrades out while tactical masters recovered their losses or created winning moves. We saw once mighty ones face writings on walls. We saw vanquished foes reveal hearts of gold. We saw diamonds in the rough revealed and champions sculpted. We saw heroes and comrades complete steps in their career-long journeys. We saw servants sacrifice all for their masters. We saw many nations united under single banners. We saw unlikely alliances forged. We saw boxers battle for titles up steep slopes. We saw historic changings of guard. We saw generational conflicts, and most epically of all, we saw brothers duel. Oh, dear readers, I know letters and words cannot do justice to what the eye has seen. But please at least say you now understand that you have not just watched a bike race where men in tights, shaved legs see who can get from point A to point B the fastest. We have seen an epic. It was a grand struggle with thousands of micro struggles within it. The Tour de France is not just a sporting event to sell more newspapers, to advertise tourism and brand names, or even to satisfy our love of athleticism. In the grand scheme of things, the beautiful bicycles themselves are only a prop in the larger story. Why, the Tour de France is the Iliad and Odyssey combined. It is a titanic journey that transforms its travelers into new men as they tackle hurdle after hurdle and at the same time engage in contests of arms as monumentous as the ones that took place on the beaches of Troy many millennia ago. Every bike race is an epic in its own, sometimes little, sometimes large way. But the epic is the Tour. We reference cycling history and eras based on who won the Tour that year, like the Romans did of old with their yearly elected councils. We count on the days, weeks, and months to the Tour, which is something that, despite our deep love, we do not at all for the Giro or the Vuelta. When the Giro and the Vuelta finish, we move on with our lives quickly, but it is not so with the Tour. Every year, this year for the first time not in July, for 3 weeks, our lifestyle changes. For 3 weeks, we know there's another installment of the epic going on in the land of the Franks, and we want to be as plugged in to the drama as possible. Before DVR and replayable live streams, our days would be completely structured around the epic. But even to just watch the replays changes our routines and schedules. With articles, daily previews, YouTube videos, podcasts, Twitter feeds, betting sites, there is a hyper-heightened sense of drama to this race above all the others. And it is because it is the epic. Of all the races on the calendar, this is the one that functions in the largest superlatives possible, with or without all the ingredients of a good race, because it is the one that matters most. Dear readers, this year we had all the ingredients too. We cheered, we laughed, we gasped, we slept, we jumped, we were frustrated, we were let down, we were on the edge of our seats, we were saddened, we were heartbroken, we were impressed, we were stunned beyond belief, we were deeply moved. Again, other races make us feel such things, but it is significantly heightened when these emotions come through during the epic, the Tour. It was a mythical duel between two seemingly average Joes from a tiny, often forgotten European country. The two Slovenians, Tadej Pogačar and Primož Roglič, are not the same people now in Paris that started this tour in Nice, and most certainly their relationship is permanently altered. They seemed friendly compatriots who loved to race bikes, but they and others rose to the task to do feats of great heroism. But unique to this edition, in the process they seemed to transform into brothers, though born in different decades. And when the relationship was finally sealed for all to see, and the older brother was about to make the family and the whole country proud, as he would be the first to win the great race before the talented young one would surely outdo him in years to come, the younger brother, unexpectedly, like one chosen by fate for a great destiny, unleashed the most powerful performance no one could comprehend and accidentally vanquished his older brother, who he so looked up to and loved. This installment of the epic was shaping up to be another variation of the typical story we so cherish, where a hero rises to the top thanks to his hard work and determination to strive for excellence, his teammates' selfless hard work, and his clever use of tactics and innovations. This year we seem to be getting that main story with a brand new cast for the first time in years, and then there was a side plot of this brotherly relationship with another rival. But in a strange twist at the end, the brotherly relationship took over the plot and turned brotherly love into fratricide. We are all still comprehending the reality of the final dark twist. So we have not yet even begun to understand the story's meaning. What truths is it supposed to reveal and teach us? Thus, picking up the pieces of normal life will be more difficult than ever this time around. Yes, every year our thoughts fly home from their 3-week adventure in France, and it takes us a few days for the dust to settle and for us to remember where we physically have been the whole time. Surely that is the finest tribute we can pay to a story. It has so engrossed and moved us, we cannot simply snap back into normal life. The Tour is not always the most exciting race. More not than often, actually. The Tour is not the race we consider our most dearly beloved. But to state the cliche, the Tour is the Tour, and we understand it is the ultimate. We mourn its winding down and only accept its end with heavy hearts. At its completion, we compare this edition to its predecessors. Not all are equal, but ultimately they are all satisfying. And when it is done, we start to look forward to next year's installment. With the arrivée in Paris, we produce our final thoughts that quickly wander straight into next year's Grand Départ. But for the purposes of these daily stage reports, my final thought here at the arrivée in Paris is the same as my first thought at the start of the first report from the Grand Départ in Nice. Vive la Tour! All right, and with that, Tour de France 2020 in the books for good. Unless I just, pull these episodes out and just reminisce at some other point too. But whatever. Thank God it's done. I'm so glad. But I've been cutting it to the wire for getting previews and stuff done for the season, and I have like a week left. And some would say I don't. Some would say I'm late. But anyways, whatever. So it was too long. I admit that it was too long. Mostly at the end, but I kind of actually liked my structure that I had here. You got to have a weird beginning when it's the final part or final install. If it's the last movie in a series of movies, you have to have a weird beginning to it. You know what I mean? Do you not feel that? I can't be the only one. I think that's like the last. Yeah, that's how you do it. The first one that comes to mind is, I guess, Dark Knight Rises, even though that's not as good as the other two. But the ending, or the beginning of that, it was different, and it was kind of weird. I think that happened in Matrix 3 as well. Also, that one, but those are bad examples, because those movies aren't as good as the other ones. Anyways, weird beginning, it's kind of fun. That's, I don't know. What I did, I think would kind of count, and it was a good way to reminisce about the whole thing. Yeah, I thought it's fun, too. That's, again, when I talk about this is what the show is all about, is kind of that kind of stuff, if you know what I mean. If you don't, keep listening, and we can dive in and figure it out together. And then yeah, the second part, it's not the final stage unless you have like reactions from the big, very important people, the VIPs like Eddie Merckx and everything. You have to have that kind of stuff. So like you can't just jump into like what was the sprint like and everything. You gotta properly review the tour. So that's what I did there. Then you describe the sprint. It was pretty cool. Sam Bennett, I like him a lot. And then the podiums, that was probably too long. The podiums are boring usually. Yeah, it's the anomaly when they're exciting, like Geraint Thomas's. And then yeah, last thoughts. I needed to wrap it up quicker, but I still like a lot of what I said. I still think a lot of what I had to say there is actually there's some important lines in my eyes that highlight the purpose of the show, as I've been saying. I will leave it to you guys to figure out like what those kind of are or what. Perhaps I'll use it again too. I thought that was the big flaw, if anything, in this last episode is it was not only was it too long, I used up excellent material that I could have used for like next year's ending or something. But when I was doing it, I don't really know what I was thinking the last day. I just wanted to do it justice. So it ended up being too long, but that's that. And yeah, I don't know. It was a great tour. It was a great tour. Best of my lifetime. I was not born before 1989. So yeah, best of my lifetime. And I highly, highly, highly enjoyed it. Fun to cover it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it too. I thought I did good enough and I got enough compliments on it that this is how basically this show came about. It's like I was just gonna do the blog, but then it's like, yeah, let's take it to the next level or something, just because it's like, who reads blogs? But so yeah, here we are. You can clearly tell I'm sick. But yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. Follow me on Twitter, Cycling Odysseys. Follow me on the blog posts themselves are on cyclingodysseys.com. Send me an email about anything. I got lots of big ideas and stuff in the works too. That's just not even just like the pro cycling explanation kind of stuff coming. So get ready for that. And please subscribe to the show because these episodes come out at random. Best to just have it just drop right in your feed right there, And leave a 5-star review because I'll read it out. And yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. Vive la cyclisme.